Alright, Doom Patrol episode 3. I gotta say, it's kind of funny that this episode involves puppets, and this episode is actually called Puppet Patrol, considering that I reviewed Gotham. That was my last review, and that involved the puppet too, Scarface. Here we have the highlight of the episode is the actual little puppet theater. We do get a lot of DC references, name drops, Batman, Justice League, Aqua-Man, Super Friends, and for the most part, the episode is essentially filler. It fleshes out characters just enough to make the episode count. It fleshes out their background mostly. Nothing really moves the plot forward or progresses it in a way that's gonna matter. But there are some little touches of plot points being moved forwards. As instance, Cyborg, now that he's on board, and we do get a little fun road trip. But now that Cyborg is on the team, leading it, driving them to try to find the chief, we get a little hint that, he's responsible for his mother's own death. And all these characters, that's what you gotta like about them. All of them were dicks before they were what they are now, and they're not even really heroes yet, but maybe they will be. So, Cyborg, he is easily the strongest. Next to the puppet show, he's the strongest character in this episode. In terms of likability for me, I felt like, what's his name? Cliff Robot Man. I felt like he was kind of dickish to Cyborg in this episode. I didn't particularly like him trying to just antagonize him, but I could see that's where this relationship was headed. I believe we'll have a strong bond down the line, but as for now, first it was Cyborg being dickish to Robot Man, and now it's Robot Man being dickish towards Cyborg. And those two are my favorite characters right now, so I'm not too fond of that little dynamic. I'd rather have them get along better. The quality, it's still got a cinematic quality to it, like just a whole feel and vibe. Although I do have to say that Crazy Jane, there's a moment near the end of the episode where she goes full on fire form, and it looks really cheap and low budget when she starts bombing this place to set it ablaze. Uh, yeah, that was some cheap quality right there. I was impressed by everything else in the episode except for that. And it was pretty fun that they all went on this road trip together, and then Jane just decides, they're going to go to this place where Mr. Nobody was created. They meet this other guy who's going there to get special powers. And that's what the whole place is there for. You go there and you pay money to get a certain power. They have, I can't remember how many, I think they said they had 28. Well, they don't have the money once they get there. They can't afford it, but they spend a long time in this very long winded puppet show that tells the entire history of the scientists behind it and what eventually led to him being shot by the chief. And the guys, the reaction, some of the reactions were pretty hilarious in this episode. There are a lot of f bombs from Robot Man. You gotta like that. That's a joy. In terms of overall, they didn't progress. They didn't find any more information about the chief, where he could be, where he might be. But there were some potential developments for new plot points, which Robot Man beat a bunch of puppet dudes apart, a bunch of human puppets. He tore them apart, beat beat one of them with half of another one. Uh, but then he was horrified by the murders he committed. So that's a potential new direction. As for Jane, nothing really new happened there. She's pretty acceptant of who she is. It did come to light, though, that Jane is not the core personality. It's one of the other 63 that are the core personality. All in all, she has 64 personalities. Yeah, a couple of them came out this episode, but not too much. For the most part, it was Jane taking action, taking the forefront. And the puppets were just so spectacular in this episode. You have it turns out that the one scientist who was thought to be shot and killed by the chief is still kept alive, and he's controlling everybody else on the premises that works at this place. There were a lot of funny things, but those puppets, man, they look spectacular, absolutely spectacular. I am really enjoying that. I don't know if I'm going to get another puppet soon, but I am enjoying the hell out of getting puppets right now. Like I said, there wasn't much development. They flesh out backgrounds of Negative Man, and they kind of insinuate when he tries to depart himself from the negative energy through an experiment that created Mister Nobody in the first place. It leads to this confrontation between him and the negative energy. But they kind of try to insinuate that it's his own fault, or at least the negative energy thing does. It's his own fault that this happened to him, that his life took this direction, and you see a lot of his backstory where he's just suffering from the crash that burned up his body, and he can't leave. He's got to be kept in quarantine because his presence is contaminated. It's killing everybody else. It's toxic or something to that degree. Uh, so he's got to be kept isolated apart from his wife. And his wife wants to move on, and he's begging her not to. But and she's like, "This is the best thing for us." And I don't. I don't think they showed her having an awareness of him being gay. It's possible they did, and I just don't remember that. But it seemed like she had some kind of idea that she knew that he was actually gay, and ultimately it was for the best that they were just living a lie. So she moves on, and the guy that he was with secretly comes there, and he kind of just tells him to go away. But in present day, when he's got this negative energy removed from him, there's a confrontation between the two, and it seems to try to insinuate that it's his own fault for being a dick. Now, yeah, granted, he was a cheater and all that, and that's not really cool, but you can't insinuate that it's what happened to him is something he deserves. People screw up. People are flawed. They make all kinds of mistakes. He wasn't a murderer or anything like that. So he didn't real. I didn't really feel like that was a real payoff with the negative energy insinuating that it was his own fault. But I do absolutely agree that all these people were kind of garbage human beings before they were who they are now, and this is kind of a punishment for that. So Jane Jane had some excellent. There was actually some action this time around. Before we haven't really seen any hardcore action, but Robot Man can actually fight. I was afraid that he wouldn't be able to really move around much, considering how he moves around and that he's got little to low mobility most of the time we see him. But he actually gives us some pretty hardcore action. So that and the developments with Cyborg potentially learning that he killed his own mother and that everything he knows is a lie. And he gets cut off from his father this episode. He's trying to use the jet, the personal jet, and his father's like, "No, you want to go at this alone? Then you got to be a man and go at this alone." So, but obviously his father's, he doesn't want him to follow this breadcrumb trail, so it bleeds into that too. But there's a lot of funny, hilarious stuff. There was some stuff going on with Jane, but ultimately it fleshed out the characters to a great degree, but it didn't move the plot forward necessarily. So it introduced what could be new plot points, but largely filler episode, mixed episode for me. I'd give it a 6 out of 10. Amazing puppet show in there, and they also, in the end, it resulted in the creation of a new villain. I something I can't remember. It's something like the villain is just completely wacky looking, absurd. That it was that this dude that was going on this journey with him because he wanted powers too, and he was so impressed by the puppet show and shocked by the twist that the scientist, the puppet scientist show turned out to be a Nazi. And oh man, it was it was enjoyable to watch. I still recommend watching it. Really watching this show, giving it a chance. It's been good so far. It's been better than Titans. And in some cases that isn't saying a whole lot because Titans did do a lot of things that I'm not particularly fond of, and they had what felt like a lot of filler episodes for such a short season. That this it's borderline filler, but it does flesh out characters. So give it a shot, watch it. You might enjoy it, even if it's just to watch the puppet show. I felt that was it was pretty theatrical. 6 out of 10. Subscribe, ring that notification bell, and just stay awesome. Rock on.